Hi, I'm here with Professor Pat Pattison, songwriting educator from Berklee College of Music. And how you doing, Pat?
I'm doing great. Good to see you again.
Yeah, you too. Pat was actually a professor of mine at Berklee, and I learned a lot from him. He was a great mentor of mine, and he's in town here, so I just wanted to do a short interview and talk about some of the new things that are going on. You have a new book.
I do. I have a book that came out January 6th. It's my fourth book.
Great.
They called me and said, "Can you get a book out really fast?" I had done the book that you had, or the three books you had. The Essential Guide to Lyric Form and Structure, Essential Guide to Rhyming, and Writing Better Lyrics. The Writing Better Lyrics book was doing very, very well for steady year after year after year. And so about, I don't know, 4 years ago maybe, Writer's Digest called me and said that we've sold 80,000 copies of this and it's time to do a new edition.
Wow.
And so I said, okay. And so we went into sort of new edition mode. I wrote 100 new pages and rewrote most of the chapters in the book. Because, since 1995 when that book was published, until, about 4 years ago, I learned more stuff. I teach at Berklee College of Music, and you know how good the students there are. And when you have really good students, you have to sort of stay in front of them, and so every song that I listen to teaches me something. And so over that time, I learned a lot more, and that got included in the new Writing Better Lyrics. And actually, Gillian Welch did a foreword for that book, which was really quite nice. She's, I think, 8 Grammy nominations and 3 Grammys into her career at this point.
Wow.
So that's pretty cool. So anyway, the book started, according to my publisher, flying off the shelves. And they said, "Is there something you can do really fast to follow up on the success of the new edition?" And I thought, yeah, I can probably do another book, but doing something fast, no. And so I've already done the book on lyric structure, the book on rhyme, and then the Writing Better Lyrics, which covers some of that, but also covers the brainstorming process and use of verse development and so on. I've got a new chapter in there called Understanding Motion, which is about 40 pages long. It shows you really how the innards of the structures work. And I'm really proud of that chapter. I sent that chapter to Gillian when I was writing it, and she called me at 4 in the morning and said, "I can't put this down," because she's a geek, a real geek. So at any rate, I decided that I would do a book on metaphor and sense-bound writing. And so I put together the book, which I just happen to have right here, called Songwriting Without Boundaries. Here's the new edition of Writing Better Lyrics. So I put this book together. It's 4 14-day challenges. The first challenge is 14 days of what we used to call object writing, and I guess still do, but it's now developed over the years, so that not only are we writing about something like coffee cup, using that as a prompt, you could call that what writing, but also waitress clearing a table, who writing, graduation day, when writing, cliff by an ocean, where writing. And so I sent out to my database, which is pretty extensive because I've been doing so much touring. I sent them out an announcement that I was going to post prompts on a site called objectwriting.com, which is one of my students out down in Melbourne is running that site. So for 42 days, 14 divided times 3, for 42 days, we sent out, or we would post a prompt at objectwriting.com, and I invited my database to respond to the prompts. 10-minute prompts, 5-minute prompts, 90-second prompts. So 3 a day for 14 days, 10, 5, and 90. So every day we got something like between 30 and 80 posts. And Claire, my manager, wife, best friend, etc., went through all the prompts every day and gave me the best 6. And from the best 6 I picked 2. So each prompt in the book has 2 responses, 2 really good responses to the prompt. And so you go through and you as the reader do your prompt, and then you have already built in 2 other people who have done it. And so that goes through for 14 days. Then 14 days of literally step-by-step how to create metaphor. And then the third 14-day challenge is extending and reversing metaphor. And then Gillian's idea, the fourth challenge is doing it all in rhythm and rhyme. And so actually, the only part of the book that has to do with, literally, with songwriting is the last one. And of course, a lot of other people do rhythm and rhyme too, besides songwriters. Poets do, for example. So it's really a book on creative writing, much more than it is a book on songwriting, although certainly it serves songwriters really well. And so now my publisher said, "This is going crazy, this is so cool." And, I'm really happy when my publisher says that, because it means that I'm reaching people, and that's, at this point, something that I really want to do. Getting to the point in my life where I think about things like legacy. So.
Well, that's great. Yeah, one of the things that when I was studying your material in the past was I noticed how much depth there was to it. There's a lot of structure and a system, whereas other books that I read on songwriting tended to be kind of vague. And maybe you could talk a little bit about that, because I noticed you actually founded the songwriting program at Berklee College of Music, and to this day I believe it's the only college in the world where you can actually major in songwriting.
Yeah, that may still be true, although there may be some people who think they have a major in songwriting and really don't.
Right. Well, the one thing about Berklee that I really liked while I was there was that the songwriting program was so systematized, and it really gave new writers something to do that wasn't so vague. It was very specific.
Yeah. Well, it's all been very, very tool based. I also back in the day was looking at songwriting books, and there weren't many back then. But the big songwriting book was Sheila Davis's The Craft of Lyric Writing.
Right, I read that one.
And I thought, wow, okay, this is a pretty cool book. I guess I don't have to write one. And then I got to the place where she was talking about, the real nitty gritty, writing in rhythm, rhyme schemes, finding rhymes, all of that stuff. And where the rubber meets the road, I found that book was very little help. And I thought, okay, so, and because of my background, I did my doctoral work in linguistic philosophy at Indiana University, and I did an outside master's degree in literary criticism at the same time from the Kenyon School of Letters. And both of those really forced you to go into the language and see how it worked and what systems were involved in language. So when I started teaching at Berklee, one of the courses that I taught very early on, I called it Analysis of Song Lyrics. And actually it was a course in literary criticism, but I knew that nobody would take a course called literary criticism, so I called it Analysis of Song Lyrics. And I used, Paul Simon and Steely Dan and Joni Mitchell and Dylan and so on as fodder for literary criticism, and people took it in droves. And for me, it was really eye-opening. I'd been touring with my band for, several years and writing all the songs, and I had no idea what I was doing. And then suddenly, when I applied the tools of linguistic philosophy and literary criticism to lyric writing and to songwriting, it just sort of opened up. It was pushing a curtain back. I thought, my God, this there are tools available here. Just very simply, every section that you write is going to have some number of lines or other. That doesn't sound very profound until you start talking about the emotional effect that an odd number of lines or an even number of lines has on you. An even number of lines feels really even and feels balanced, and so if you're talking to somebody about or writing a verse about how grateful I am to have met you, that's a very stable feeling, and so you really want it to sound. You want the structure to act as a film score. That is, to make its own comment and say, yes, I feel stable too, don't I? Whereas on the other hand, if you're feeling a sense of longing or a sense of sadness or something, an odd number of lines might make you feel that sort of thing. So John Mayer writes, your body is a wonderland, your body is a wonderland, your body is a wonderland.
Right.
And there's a sense of longing there now. He does that for both his first and second chorus. His first chorus comes after, we've got a room for two, and we've got the afternoon, and if you want love, we'll make it. Your body is a wonderland, body is a wonderland, your body is a wonderland. And so he wants more. He just got into the room, and so now, I love the shape that you take when you're crawling towards the pillowcase, and I'll never let your head hit the bed without my hand behind it. That, of course, that guarantees he'll never sleep alone again. And then your body is a wonderland, your body is a wonderland, your body is a wonderland. It makes you feel that sense of longing, wanting to move. And then the last chorus is your body is a wonderland, your body is a wonderland, your body is a wonderland, your body is a wonderland. And now it's time to have a cigarette. We're done. And that now feels stable. So, if either one of those choruses, the first two choruses had been a 4-line chorus, the sense of longing would have disappeared, and it would feel just like a series of facts. So that it's eye-opening to me that technical issues like the number of lines you use in a section also create their own emotion. And if you add that emotion to the emotion that is created by the harmony and the melody and the words that you're using, then you're making more impact in your song. And so those kinds of things, number of lines, length of lines, the rhythms of your lines. If you start a line on the downbeat of the bar, it'll feel stable. It'll feel like you mean it. It'll feel like a fact. If you start it behind the downbeat of the bar, it'll feel completely different. It'll feel like it's in motion. It'll feel unstable. And so you could sing the same line, depending on the relationship of that line, that melody and that harmony and so on, depending on the relationship of that line to the downbeat of the bar, it will have a different emotion. And so you just say, what do I feel? What does this mean to me? This line which says, I really love you. Is it, I really love you? Or is it, I really love you? And if it's, I really love you, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, I really love you, as opposed to 1, 2, 3, I really love you.
Right, completely different feeling.
Completely different feeling, emotion, just depending on where you line it up relative to the downbeat of the bar. The rhythm. What's your rhyme scheme? Why are you using matched couplets to say, I'm so lost without you? Why? So that your rhyme scheme is saying, I really feel solid, and your rhythm, your meaning is, I feel so confused. And so your rhyme scheme also can create, because it creates motion, and motion creates emotion, your rhyme scheme itself carries emotional significance. And so you want it to line up and support the idea that you're trying to use. And all of this stuff, which is just called prosody, and even the rhyme types that you use. Feeling really stable, perfect rhyme. Feeling unstable, not so perfect rhyme. A lot of people run around the country saying, all professional writers should use is perfect rhyme, which is like saying that every verse or chorus should end on the tonic chord, singing the tonic note with the tonic in the bass. And that's silly.
Right, sometimes it's the imperfect rhymes that give so much more character
Sure, absolutely. You know, Warren Zevon writes, she's so many women, he can't find the one who was his friend. He's hanging on to half a heart, but he can't have the restless part. So he tells her to hasten down the wind. And then we got friend and wind, a consonants rhyme. And that feels like, oh, honey, just go, I'll be fine, just don't want you to be happy. You know, that, as opposed to she's so many women, he can't find the one who was his friend. He's hanging on to half a heart, but he can't have the restless part. So he tells her to hasten round the bend. And now he just wants her the hell out of his life. Friend and bend, the perfect rhyme, just closes it off and makes it feel solid. Friend and wind makes it float. And so the rhyme type itself carries emotional significance. And you know, as songwriters, we're in the business of creating emotion. Consequently, we're in the business of creating emotion, or of motion. We're creating emotion, and therefore we create motion that creates that kind of emotion.
Right, and just having some of these tools, this and many of the others I learned from you at Berklee, it gives avenues for a songwriter to let their emotions out. And not having these tools, you can get into your own inspiration and creativity, but sometimes there aren't any channels to really put it down into some kind of solid form.
That's true.
You end up spinning your wheels.
Well, you end up writing in a fear-based way. You don't really know how to fix it, and so the rewriting process simply becomes doing it differently. Rather, this is how I felt today.
Right. Rather
than having that tool belt to roll out and say, okay, how am I feeling? Stable, wax on, or unstable, wax off? How does this line feel when I say I'm going to love you forever? Does it feel like I'm going to love you forever? Does it mean I'm going to love you forever, but I have to go off and do, so how does that line feel? What's the feeling that I have? And then, place it behind the downbeat or on the downbeat. How far behind the downbeat also makes a difference. You can play around with that for a while. And you make your harmonic choices and your melodic choices, your rhyme choices, all of that stuff, depending on how it feels. And once you have those tools, then you can rewrite. You can say, well, yeah, this doesn't quite feel like I want it to feel, why not? And then you can try different stuff. And it's just some little road signs that the tools give you. But if you don't know the tools, you're helpless. Then you get writer's block because you think it's all magic. And you don't want to learn anything because if you learn something, oh my God, it'll stifle my creativity. And let me just say, as you know, knowledge is power. And once you have the knowledge, then creativity really kicks in, as opposed to being stifled.
That's so important. There's so many people today are caught up in the myth that the big stars out there, that it came to them from God, and a lot of it's hard work and studying, learning from everybody they can.
Yeah. One of my friends, a really prominent songwriter, was writing with a very prominent artist's mother. The mother had been part of the duo before, but he was writing with her for the daughter's first solo album. They're trying to write the big hit. And she came into him and said, I got this from God last night. And he looked at the lyric and said, have God rewrite it, would you please?
I know the one biggest tip I give to new songwriters who come to me as students is that the difference between amateur and beginning songwriters is that when they write a song, they say, look, Mom, I wrote a song, whereas professionals write a song and they say, okay, I have a draft.
Yeah.
And they'll spend another 20, 30 hours over the next month or so rewriting and editing. But if they don't have the tools, like you mentioned, then if they do get anywhere with a career, a producer will come in and tear everything apart and redo it himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's not only that, but if you don't have any tools, let's say that, the first thing, of course, is that you have your entire life to write your first album. And once you write that first album, let's say that a song on it really hits for some reason. And so now you spend the next year and a half touring that album, and you're on the road. Oh, good luck writing on the road. And then your record company says, okay, so, let's, we've got you this a place in Hawaii. You've got 3 months to write your next album. And so go get it. And so now, of course, everybody around you is telling you how great you are, because everybody around you wants to hang around so they can tell their friends that they hang around with you. And so nobody will tell you that you're writing shit. I can say that, right? So that you're right. And so you have to now write in 3 months what it took you, say, 8 years to write the first album. And how did you know which songs to put on the album? Were they the ones that everybody liked when we played live? And so now you're not playing live, you've got no tools, you're just going from inspiration, and that's what's called the sophomore jinx. That your second album usually is crap. Why? Because you don't know how to write. You've been writing by inspiration this whole time with no tools, and now that inspiration just isn't giving you anything really decent.
Right, I agree completely. One of the things I felt when I was studying at Berklee was I was gaining tools that were shortcutting years of trial and error trying to figure it out myself. And it really, when I got out of school, I was just able to write, one good song after another. Whereas, of course, I had to work them, but I had the methods, the tools to actually do that.
Yeah, in terms of writing one good song after another, just remember that 90% of everything you write is not your best 10%. Which I find incredibly comforting. That your job is always to fill your 90%, and Sting's 90% may be completely different than my 90% might be.
Right.
But nonetheless, and John Mayer, one of my students, when he wrote his last album, which I think is brilliant, he was writing for 3 months before he got his first song for that album, and he was writing almost every day. So that it took a while for him, and the songs that he rejected, I'd love to see those songs. I bet they're probably better than many songs that are out there on the radio now. But this new album, Born and Raised, is really quite a lovely piece of work.
Yeah, I remember asking you one time, out of the songs you write, how many are keepers? And you said at that time, right now it's about 1 out of 4. And I think that was a really good point for a lot of new songwriters, is to realize that you're going to write songs and finish them, and maybe 1 out of 4, 1 out of 6, 1 out of 7.
Well, that's a pretty good ratio. I mean, here's the thing. Writing in Nashville, where if you're really after it, you're writing basically a song a day. Mm-hmm. And so now, at the end of say 6 weeks of writing, you're writing pretty good songs. But at the end of 6 weeks of writing, you now go in and have a recording session, a demo session. The demo session is going to cost you probably, if it's your own song, it's probably going to cost you maybe $1,200 a song, a good demo session. If it's co-written, probably about $600 or $700 a song. And so you're going in there with you've got a catalog and from that period of time of maybe 30 songs. Now you're going to have to spend some money, and some fairly serious money. And now, which ones am I going to pick? And so you'll pick 5. That's what the session will be, 5 songs. And so there you are with 5 songs out of 30 that you're going to demo. And out of those songs that you demo, maybe your publishing company will say, we'll pitch this one, or we'll pitch 2 of these. And so, there's all those pretty good songs that you wrote, but when push comes to shove, which ones really have legs and which ones don't, and those are the ones you spend money on. I learned a lot that way. When you have this stack of songs, and every day you finish a song, you say, boy, that's great! And you feel the Grammy coming in, and but when you put all 30 of those together and say, okay, which ones really have it? Comes down to that place where the rubber meets the road. And, you really, if you're writing a lot, you're lucky to get 1 out of 10 or 15 that really is the best work that you can do. The 90% rule says 1 out of 10. one of those songs will be the best that you've written that time, and the other ones, all are okay to some level.
And that's good information because that gives the average songwriter an idea of what to expect if they want to really make a career out of this and what type of work is involved.
Yeah, well, sure, absolutely. A lot of writers wrote songs today in Nashville, and I think it was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar who said, "I practice 8 hours a day. If you don't practice 8 hours a day, when we meet, I'll win." and so just know that that there are professional writers, probably at this point, I would say 2,500 to 5,000 professional writers who write songs every day in Nashville. Every day they write songs, every day. Now, listen to country radio sometime and you get a sense of how bad those songs can be. And sometimes how good they can be.
Mm-hmm.
But mostly, I don't know. Aren't there better songs being written by these songwriters? And the answer is always yes, of course there are. But they generally don't make the radio.
Right, well they're trying to plug into a certain format.
Yeah. Procter & Gamble runs the whole show because they buy the commercial time on the radio, and they want to reach a certain demographic, typically women from 25 to 45. What would a woman from 25 to 45 want to hear? I have been asked so many times, or the comment in a writing session. Okay, well let's talk about this. What would a woman want to hear? And so there's two middle-aged white guys trying to figure out what a woman wants to hear. Well, she either wants to hear, soap opera boy saying I have feelings, or she wants to hear I am strong, I am woman. And so you try to write those songs to satisfy who? Well, your publishing company, who knows what kind of songs are getting picked up by the record companies, who know what kind of songs are being played on the radio, who know what the demographic is, because Procter & Gamble, of course, wants that market share. So it's been a really unhealthy thing that's been going on there. But that's just the reality of the business.
It's understandable. You do have to take into consideration how do you get your song to be heard by many, many people or a certain demographic, and so they think about those things.
Yeah. But for most of us, the game is not how do I make money writing songs. For most of it is how do I get maximum pleasure out of the process. And that's the real key. I mean, if you're writing songs in order to get rich and famous, or in order to get rich, Harvard Business School is a pretty good place. If you want to get rich, you should be going to Harvard Business School. I mean, what are you doing writing songs? But if you want to get rich here and learn what it is that you are and what it is that you can see and what it is that you can do and where you can be creative and how deep you can go, then writing songs is for you.
That's great. That's great. So in terms of technique, if there were one thing that you could tell new songwriters that would be a helpful thing to do, that you've seen from your students that you over and over again you have to critique them, and what would it be? What do you think stands out?
What stands out for me and always stands out is when you're writing a song, it's not about telling people who you are. It's about telling people who they are. How do you do that? And the answer is, I think, universally the same. Gillian and John Mayer do this very, very well. Two of my favorite students do it aside from you.
All right, I'd be the third.
They make sure that they stimulate the listener's senses. When you start a song with turn down the lights, turn down the bed, turn down these voices inside my head, I can't make you love me. When you start a song like that, everybody has a picture of the bed. And the picture of the bed is coming from their own imagination. Everybody knows where the light source is, and that's from their imagination. So Mike Reed and Alan Shamblin's words are full of the listener's stuff because they stimulated the listener's senses. And so using specific sense-bound language is probably the strongest entry you have into your listener, because your listener, it's an involuntary response. When I say the smell of fresh cut grass, bam, you're there. Because I've stimulated your senses. And you know, I'm smelling the grass, but I'm smelling the grass in North St. Paul, Minnesota on a Saturday morning, and I hear lawnmowers and all that. When I said the smell of fresh cut grass for you, God knows where you were, but it wasn't where I was. And so you're putting your stuff in my words. And so it's about you. And so make your songs, bring your senses to the table. And that's what the new book is all about, by the way. The first challenge is about sense-bound writing. And then using that sense-bound writing to see through, to make one thing blend into another, the use of metaphor. To see a cloud as a sailing ship tacking across the sky. That sort of stuff. And that again, it's very sense-bound, but it makes you see something, makes you develop your own picture, and so you become emotionally committed to that. So that, that would be my recommendation, is learn to write from your senses. In fact, when every year I take 120 students down to Nashville for 5 days of clinics and seminars and trips and so on.
Right, I went on that Nashville trip with you, I don't know how many years ago now.
Yeah.
And it was a really good experience, meeting with record company presidents, publishing company presidents, hit songwriters.
Yeah. One year, Gillian and Dave came in to talk to the students. They have several times, but this one year, one of the students said, "So, what is it that you got at Berklee that you still use and that you think is probably the most important thing you got?" Gillian said, "Oh, no contest, object writing." She said, without that, I wouldn't even have a record deal. She said it made me the writer that I am.
That's great. Yeah, and that's an exercise I still use. And when I have students who come by and they want to work on the lyrics, usually it's the most obvious thing is that there are not enough images, senses in the lyrics. It's very helpful.
Yeah, and the earlier in the lyric, the better. Set the scene, bring them right in.
That's great. That's a really good point. And if you could, give new songwriters who want to make a career out of this, one tip about the business side of becoming a songwriter.
Well, I play tennis with my little sister, and I can beat her. I'm pretty good. I mean, I don't play with anybody else. I just play with her because
Because you can beat her.
Because I can beat her. Yeah. Yeah. I like feeling like I'm the best tennis player around. And so how good am I? I don't know, because I don't ever have to face anybody who can play. So that if you want to be a songwriter, don't put yourself in a situation where you're the best songwriter you know, whether you're the best songwriter you hang out with, which means, I tell my students, go someplace where the songwriters are. And really that's sort of two places. Well, more than two places. But there's some pretty decent songwriters in the Los Angeles, San Diego area. People who are doing pretty well. But it's really difficult to hang out in those because it's so spread out.
Right.
A co-write is a day out of your life. Getting there for 2 hours and writing and then getting home for 2 hours. Nashville is where I tell my students to go. It's graduate school. More really good songwriters per square foot in Nashville than any place else in the world. It's still the Brill Building. When I walk into a restaurant in Northampton, New Hampshire, where I live, I know without looking, I am the best songwriter in that restaurant. When I walk into any restaurant in Nashville, I know without looking that I'm not even close to the best writer in that restaurant.
Huh.
When I get into a cab, I'm probably not as good a writer as the cabbie. You know, and so I love being in a place where you have to, you're constantly, you know, you can say to the cabbie, what do you think a bridge should do? And he'll tell you because he's got 3 number 1s, you know. So be in a place where the business is happening, but more important, where every day that you spend in the process of writing with people in a context where people are better than you. And that's the way you get better. You want to get better as a tennis player, play with people better than you. And that'll make you better real fast. Right, you know, I tell my students, go to the Bluebird Cafe 5 nights a week at the 6:30 show. And you go Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Don't go Sunday or Monday, that's open mics. They just go and listen to that show and learn, because songs are your best teachers. So.
Great advice, great advice. Okay, so Pat Pattison, professor from Berklee College of Music, and let's take a look at your new book covers. I noticed that I'm going to have to, I actually just reread Writing Better Lyrics, and I didn't realize that you had added pages to it, so I'm going to have to reread it again.
Yeah, there you go. Life is hard.
And so definitely pick up these books, and anything that Pat writes is always amazing.
And you might take a look at my website, which is, strangely enough, pattison.com. You'll find a lot of goodies there too, and it'll also give you access to the 5 online courses that I've written for BerkleeMusic.com. 3 in lyric writing, 1 in poetry, and 1 in creative writing. So when you go to pattison.com, just click through to the online button and sample some of those courses. And I've got a series of videos up too, and actually a video website called songwriter.com. I've been filming for that for the last 4 years, and master classes and lectures and so on. And it's a membership site and it's cheap, so take a look at it, songwriter.com. And I think that's all the infomercial part of the show that I've got.
Okay, it's the shameless sales plug.
Uh-huh.
And Pattison is with 2 T's, right?
Pattison.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks Pat. Great
My
having
pleasure.
you.
Thanks,
Good
Kevin.
seeing you again.
Good to see you.